Alright, so the time has officially come. We're gonna hone these puppies out. Let's clean them up real well. First, and so when it comes to the hone, I was talking about silicon carbide versus aluminum oxide. And it seems there's as much controversy on honing cylinders as there is about breaking in engines. Which goes to say that there's no answers out there what you're supposed to do. Everybody's got a different opinion. The silicon carbide, so the base material of Nicosil is actually silicon carbide mixed with nickel. Aluminum oxide is softer, so I don't know why guys would prefer aluminum oxide. I guess it's to deglaze, but like, what does that even mean? It's not like there's a material glazed on the cylinder. You're just trying to reintroduce a crosshatch. And I think the silicon carbide hone will do a perfectly fine job of doing that. These cylinders, you can tell the crosshatch is gone, but the cylinders themselves actually look really healthy. There's no, there's some witness marks in there, but there's nothing that'll catch a fingernail. So I think a hone job and some new rings will do the trick. Alright, so they sell honing oil for about $3,000 a jug. Otherwise they recommend, I don't know, 30 weight oil. We got 40 weight. I'm sure it'll work just fine. Cut myself a little bit there. It's alright. You want a little oil in your bloodstream, keep your heart lubricated, pumping for the longest possible time that you can. Oh yeah. Oh, Nelly. They say, what, 500 to 600 RPM, quick strokes. So, you know, it's like, alright, we got silicon carbide going with silicon carbide. I'm gonna have to say this after the fact, I gotta concentrate. Do a couple more. Calling that good. I'll get to the silicon carbide part again after I get this one done. Just flinging oil everywhere. What a fucking mess. Okay, what I was saying is, oh, silicon carbide won't cut silicon carbide. Like materials won't cut. Which, they won't cut as well, but, I don't know if you've ever heard of a water jet. But a water jet cuts literal steel. And, you tell me if water is harder than steel. So it won't cut as well, obviously. But look at that, that is way nicer. That actually did a really good job. I don't know where the hell my camera's at in my head. Huh, cool. I'll call that a success. That was smooth as glass before. Now it looks like it has a really nice crosshatch on there. Needless to say, I think it's gonna do the trick. Give you guys a better view here. I think that looks pretty good. One question I had is if I was supposed to spin it backwards. But, I don't think I'm going to be too worried about it. I think those cylinders will work quite well. While I was editing this, I noticed that I had said maybe I should run that hone backwards. And I can't be spreading misinformation. And so, moral of the story is I don't think you should have to run the hone backwards. So we're gonna take take the cylinder here, top view looking down, put a little slit in there, and then just kind of unfold it. And so then we're gonna be looking at it, like such. And so here's our depth, and we'll call this our, cross. So as you're running, we'll look at like one little scratchy bit on the hone. And so as you're running that hone down, let's say we'll start off with going clockwise. So you're gonna start off at the top of the cylinder here, and then you're essentially linearly, as long as your speed, your plunge speed and your rotation speed, RPM, are the same. So you're gonna run it down like such, and then you're gonna stop for a second on the bottom, and then start bringing it back up. And so that's what the scratch of one scratchy bit is gonna look like across your cylinder. And so, essentially you have a shit ton of those. So then, the next one looks like so. I kind of fucked that first one up, but you get the picture. And so then eventually you get this nice proper crosshatch. And so by running it backwards, all you're really doing is, doing the same thing. I did it fucked up again. You see what I'm saying? So these ones are going backwards. These were so counterclockwise. These ones are going clockwise, but really you're effectively accomplishing the same thing. So no, you don't need to run your hone backwards, unless you guys have a reason for it that I'm not thinking of. All right, so everybody always talks about these pliers and picking up coins. These are obviously the knockoff Harbor Freight version. I think the closest we're gonna get is pulling these rings out of here. Probably the most delicate task I'll ever have to do with a pair of pliers. Oh. And they sufficed. So I thought about getting new pistons, but they didn't look terrible. I took the borescope to the cylinders and measured the pistons, and there's specs out there for the maximum allowables. And we're right on the end of the spec. I think they feel pretty good. And the pistons themselves, you can still see the machining marks in them. Again, we got some witness marks, but I'm not too concerned about it. You can't catch any of them with your fingernail. So I think they look pretty healthy. I thought about spraying some of that coating on there. You can kind of thicken them up and assume the gap that would bring them back to their factory condition, but I don't know, it seems a little far-fetched, and I didn't want to have to pay for all the equipment. So we're just gonna reuse these with some new rings, fresh hone job, clean them up a little bit more, and we'll see what happens. And the more grayish, darker colored one is going to be the second compression ring. And to check our old ring gap, we'll just fit that guy in there. Then we'll flush it up with the piston. Make sure it's good and square. And then we'll grab our feeler gauges, and I already did this once. And so we got 11 thou, fits perfect. 12 thou. I can't get a 12 thou in there, so we're gonna call it somewhere between 11 and 12. Start getting into tenths, I don't really care. And so a worn piston ring for this is at 11. So I'm inclined to reduce that a bit, but I would rather err on a slightly larger ring gap than a smaller one. So we'll call that 11 to 12. on the used ring, which means a new one should be even less than that. I don't know if they're coming at like 8 thou from the factory or what. And so here's our second ring. Fit that guy in there. $12 thou fits pretty well. 13 does as well. What are we looking for? 16? There's 14. 14 is pretty clear. So yeah, we're between 14 and 15. Call it 145. So we might drop that down. So from the calculation, we'll go down to about 11 on the top ring and 12 to 14 on the bottom ring. We'll check the new ones. If you have an older engine, the spec might say to have the bottom ring be tighter. And that's because back in the day, the idea was that the top of the piston gets hotter. And so you need, the top ring is going to expand more, so you need more clearance to allow for that. But sort of the latest and greatest studies prove that you want, if you have blow by, you're going to have blow by past the top ring, and so you want the bottom ring to allow that to continue, as opposed to if you tighten that bottom ring, it'll put pressure back up on the top ring, so it'll kind of float in your groove there, and it won't seal as well. So you generally want to allow that to go past the second ring. So if you have a manual that suggests having a tighter second ring, that's not really the case anymore. So that's our old rings. Let's see how the new ones compare. Another thing is the position in the cylinder that you measure them. So when I gauged these cylinders, they're pretty cylindrical. Sometimes they'll have a slight taper to them, which might drive, I don't know why I folded these up, probably because I'm a stupid idiot. But that might drive where you check your ring end gap within the cylinder bore. Not even a 7. So this is why you always check your end gaps. To remedy this, we're gonna need a file. I know you shouldn't have your files all bound up. They're gonna dull each other, but that's just fine. So the key is to keep it square. This doesn't work worth a shit. Your fingernails are an incredibly good tool for detecting burrs. Probably should have written down what the original gap was to see if I'm even doing anything. Alright, so top current is 0.009. My file seems to suck. Probably because I have them all in here banging around against each other. So this is another fun tidbit. On 2-strokes, you generally want to align your rings because you have ports in your cylinder. Obviously, you don't have ports on a 4-stroke. And you want to make sure a ring edge doesn't catch on a port and blow your engine up. But on a 4-stroke, they provide ring clocking, but I think it's generally proven that the rings just kind of float around. So I'll match this anyway, but it's sort of not really doing a whole lot. But start off, how do we want to do this? Do you want to do these two oil rings don't really matter orientation or gap. And they say use a ring expander, but I'm sure this will work just fine. My ring expander is my fingers. So the key thing with the spacer is you want to make sure that those faces don't overlap. You want them to butt against each other. check. Yep, right there. No idea if you guys can see that or not. Next we'll do our second ring. And I'm gonna do some verification on this. Second ring we're looking at about 40 thou. First ring we're looking at 45 thou, 46 thou. Grab this guy with the stock rings in it. So yeah, the top one is indeed the thicker ring. 40 thou, perfect. And so we'll install these with the R facing up. So this is gonna be our second ring. Clock off to the left. If this broke, I would probably shed a tear. Pistons are all dialed in. Ready to get installed. Oh, look at this filthy. Filthy bottom end. Oh. Lift with your back, they say. Holy fuck. Jesus. Oh. Got this piece of wood so I don't put a bunch of load on the oil filter because it likes to fall forward. There. This thing is a mess. I might have to look at that. So as I'm getting this engine ready for reassembly, one of the things I'm doing is making sure these stud holes, whatever, for mounting the engine, aren't all full of oil and antifreeze. Because you don't want your hardware, it's unlikely because technically the fluid would have a travel path up through the valley of the thread, but you don't want it to potentially hydrolock, or as you're threading it in, displace that out, through your head gasket and not have a perfect seal. So it's just a good idea to clean those out. Some of these were just packed with oil and like, look at that. Just completely filled with oil and antifreeze. Alright. Got the cylinder bases cleaned up, as well as they will be. This thing hasn't ran in quite a few years, so we're going to try and strategically drop a little bit of, what is this, Molly assembly lube into the crank bearings. Just so they're not completely dry when she fires up. Crank bearings do feel, the connecting rod side anyway, feels pretty good. We have our piston here. This is our aft piston. Aft cylinder intake valves are the big ones, so that'll mount on there like so. Pull out our wrist pin. There's my other set of wrist pin clips. So it appears that circlip piston quantity 2, or received 2. I must have been thinking they came in a set, and I'm just an idiot, so we're going to reuse these against my better judgment. See what happens. Might have a blown up motor in 10 miles. Just one big science experiment. Alright, I think I realized why I did it. It's because I left the clip in on one side of the piston. So we'll just keep that guy in there and then put the new one on the other side. We're gonna use a little Honda oil as assembly lube for this thing, which if anything is gonna make it blow up, it'll definitely be the use of Honda oil. Okay, intake forward. Alright, what's the magic secret gonna be here? Oh fuck, hold on. I'll lose a goddamn circlip inside the engine. Put a little catch around here. What should I use? Let's just scratch that all to hell. Really don't want to introduce any dirt down there. Huh, that worked pretty good. Make sure it's seated all the way. Yep. So I'm trying to rotate it such that the pin isn't so close to the little access port there, which is proving kind of difficult to do. They say 6 or 12 o'clock. I don't think I get much say in the matter. So, time for the base gaskets. I just want to check and make sure there's not some extra hole in the old gasket that doesn't exist in the new one. For like an oil passage or something. They're Suzuki OEM gaskets, so we should be able to count on them. Perfect. It's not blood this time, just assembly lube. Should you coat that with assembly lube or oil? I don't know. Assembly lube's pretty thick. Might make it spin kind of hard on startup, but I think it'll be fine. So I know this clamp went on one of these studs. I can't remember which one. Right there, so you can see that flat. That's where the paint chipped. You got some paint on that, so that's the orientation. So that's how you can kind of figure out. You can learn a lot from the wear marks of the hardware. I believe that was the only one. So I'm kind of an idiot. I was building this workbench the other week, and I thought I had this stuff all put away, but evidently I did not. As you can see, I got sawdust all over everything, so we're gonna have to do a thorough cleaning of these heads.